Good evening. Welcome to the City of Bothell Council meeting for February 4th. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Roll call this evening. All council members are present except for Councilmember Agnew, who is absent and excused. If everybody has had an opportunity, hopefully, to look over the meeting agenda for this evening, are there any changes or alterations? Councilmember Sandberg.
I wanted to pull Agenda Bill 1416, the supplemental agreement with Blue Line, from the consent agenda to get questions answered that I emailed earlier today.
Okay.
And then also at the end of the meeting, I didn't see a discussion of Sound City's recommendation and their request that cities weigh in on our opinion on King County's Transportation Benefit District proposal. So I was hoping we would have a conversation about that at the end of the meeting.
Great. Okay. All right, seeing no others, if everybody's gotten a chance to look over the projected agenda, it should be in your council packet tonight in the folder. Just so the public knows, the council typically meets the first 3 Tuesdays of the month. We'll be meeting February 11th next Tuesday, but the council meeting on February 18th has been canceled at this point, considering North Shore School District vacation period. So, no other comments on the projected agenda? All right, so we do have a special presentation this evening. It is my first proclamation as mayor, so it's an honor to do so. And this is on behalf of the University of Washington Bothell. So I will read it and then come down and present it to the university, and then allow the university some time to speak on the subject itself. So this is Undergraduate Research Week, whereas the University of Washington Bothell joins over 800 colleges and universities across the United States, striving to enhance the undergraduate research opportunities for tens of thousands of students, effectively shaping the trajectory of students' lives and careers, as well as researchers and institutions' purpose and contribute to the continual intellectual revitalization of the campus environment. And whereas students and faculty engage in undergraduate research, contribute to actively contested questions, empirical observations, artistical inquiries, and cutting-edge technologies across many disciplines, including but not limited to mathematics and sciences, arts and humanities, health and social sciences. And whereas it is deemed essential to invite all students, particularly those of underrepresented groups or those who are first in their families to attend college, to participate in undergraduate research and benefit the sense of excitement that comes from working to answer important questions, thereby increasing student interest and persistence in advancing the innovative agenda for both the nation and of the City of Bothell's high-tech biomedical corridor. Now, therefore, as we recognize the importance of undergraduate research and providing research opportunities for the nation's talented youth, and as we encourage institutions of higher education, federal agencies, businesses, philanthropic entities, and others to support undergraduate researchers, and their faculty mentors, I, Joshua Freed, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby declare February 9th through February 15th, 2014 as Undergraduate Research Week.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Brennan. Yeah, this is my chancellor for research, and these are some students who this week is all about.
It's a pleasure, man. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Welcome.
So once you squeeze together, we'll get a couple shots. Yep.
Right here.
You want to open it?
Oh, there we go.
1, 2, 3. Great.
Great, thank you. And if you would mind saying some words, I'll make sure the microphone's turned on.
Great. So I
I think you said it all in your proclamation. Thank you very much. But what I wanted to do was just give the students a chance to introduce themselves, because it's really about celebrating the work that they're doing and with the faculty at UW Bothell. And I wanted to also invite you all to next Thursday at 5:30 in the North Creek Event Center. There's going to be a celebration of undergraduate research. So you're welcome to come and join us and hear more about what these folks are doing. So I just would like them to introduce themselves briefly and say what they're doing.
Hello, my name is Ian Barlow. I'm studying invasive seeds and the crows and the relation to the crows and how they bring invasive seeds into the wetlands. It's an unusual phenomenon that we didn't see happen when we first installed the wetlands very carefully, and we'll be curious to see what we find out. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ana Martinez, and I am researching root endophytes and how we can benefit them with our agriculture.
My name is Alyssa Branca, and I have been doing wetlands geodatabase setup basically for posterity at the college, so when other people with experiments like theirs are looking for suitable locations, they'll be able to go out and find a spot on the map to do their research.
Wonderful, thank you. Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I don't know if you did announce, but you're Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research for the University of Washington-Bothell. So glad to have you here. And Kelly Snyder also, who's a familiar face around here, is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Community Relations. So nice to see you, Kelly. We certainly appreciate having the university here as a huge contributor to our city. So thank you. I had a quick question. I know I made a proclamation, but curious, there's a lot of crows in Bothell. Why so many crows? It seems like in the last year, we came to City Hall the other day and there was a flock of crows. Is it something drawing them here?
Essentially, it's the wetlands.
Want to come up to the front really quick?
Absolutely. For the record, I'm not an expert on the crows, but from all my discussions of what's happened is that essentially the trees that we planted in the wetlands there have reached a size that they're just right for the crows to perch on at night in winter. And with the fragmented ecosystems that we have in a suburban urban area, it's just too good to resist. And so they decided to make that their home. And it's very complicated. It's very interesting. People say, "Oh, that's not natural." It is natural, but they're a mirror of our own society in some way. They come in and they do their thing whether we want them there or not. So, but how it changes the ecosystem over time will be fascinating to understand.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your contribution to that. Well, moving on to our next section, the visitor section. Do we have a sign-up sheet this evening? Yeah, if you would, that would be great. Yeah. Great, thank you. So everybody's familiar before we go into the visitor section. We did talk as a council this weekend regards on how the visitor sign-in will go. And we're considering a change as we process this. So we may go, rather than a sheet that people sign in on, we may go to a card system so people could write, if they want, their cell phone number or their email address. So if they address council and they're requesting something back from staff as questions or answers or whatever it may be, we would have that contact information. That is optional, that you would have to include that information. Just want to let you know that that's something that we considered, and the city clerk is looking at putting that system into place. But for tonight, I do have two sign-in sheets. One's for an agenda item. For that, I will set aside. The agenda item is going to be heard later, and there will be an opportunity for public to make comments on agenda item 1418 regarding the docketing plan for 2014. For tonight, I only have two people signed up, which doesn't mean we'll preclude it to that. But first on the list is Janie Robinson. I do have your address. Welcome.
Hi. Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Jeannie Robinson, and I am here as president of Friends of North Creek Forest. I want to first thank you for your recent efforts to acquire the 6 more acres of land to add to North Creek Forest. It moves us really a lot closer to the acquisition of the full 64 acres. And I also am really happy the University of Washington students are here tonight. We are a grassroots group, and for 3 years we've had dozens of University of Washington students, I recognize Ian, in the forest doing research. Thank you. And that's really important because the forest is so ecologically connected to the wetlands and the green corridor. So as you know, there is a King County Futures Grant of $500,000 that has been awarded the city if it is matched. There is also a land and water grant that has also been awarded in the amount of $197,500. All to be used exclusively to fund the acquisition of the remaining 22 acres. Time is of the essence for us to do this. The King County grant expires at the end of the year. To that end, we are pursuing several avenues of fundraising. One is a grant from the Murdoch Foundation, and the other is a legislative grant which Representative Derek Stanford has already gotten some bipartisan support for, and it's currently in committee in Olympia. So our request tonight is for 2 letters from the city simply stating that the city supports the fundraising efforts of Friends of North Creek Forest. This would be very similar to the letter you prepared for the Norcliffe grant, which you unanimously approved in July. As you may recall, one of our board members, Jerry Smeeds, requested a general memorandum of understanding at the last council meeting. At the time, we were told this would be discussed at the March council meeting. While we are encouraged that this will happen, it will be too late for the 2 grants we are undertaking this month. So the letter of inquiry for the Murdoch grant is due in February, and the request for legislative funding is garnishing support as we speak. So it's vitally important that we have a letter of support from the council for both of those 2 entities. Our hope is to match the King County Futures Grant before it expires. We hope you can do that tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, imagine you're going to get a couple questions. If you wouldn't mind waiting. So the $500,000 Conservation Futures Grant, you're saying as long as you match another $500,000, you could get that?
That would be $1 million, which we would be able to use to purchase. There's 2 people own the remaining 22 acres, and they're willing sellers. If we have the right amount of money, the city can.
How close are you to raising that $500,000?
The grant we're applying for with Murdoch is $200,000.
Okay.
The legislative grant, though, I don't know how much would be given to us. We're asking $500,000. And we have a fundraiser who we're consulting with that used to work for Nature Conservancy in Seattle Parks that has several other contacts we're trying to get.
So when would the commitment have to be made upon your behalf?
Well, the letters of support from the council are just letters that would go along with the grant application and to the legislature. It just simply states, like the Norcliffe letter you sent in the summer, that the city understands that we're going after this money and that you are in support of our fundraising efforts.
And are you asking for finances from the city at this point, or just
No finances from the city.
Okay.
The grants that the city has in hand the total of $697,500
Yep.
are all ready to go if we can match the $500,000. We'll have enough to purchase at least half of that property. And so we're really encouraged, but the one expires the end of this year. So we're going great guns to get it done.
Great. We have another question, Councilmember Sandberg.
If you were successful in getting the Murdoch grant and you were successful at getting the full amount, the $200,000, but you were unable to raise any more funds to match the entire $500,000 grant, do you have a plan that you could at least use the $200,000 Murdoch grant to match $200,000 of the King County Conservation Futures
Yes.
grants, or is it an all or nothing proposal?
No, we could definitely do that. The 200,000, if I'm right, and Pat Parkhurst also, I think, could answer that. The 197,500 could be used to match the King County money. Then we would only have to raise 300,000, and that would give us $1 million. So the Murdoch grant and the legislative money is only part of our fundraising efforts. We're still going after other grants and other individual donors because we aren't going to just count on that.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand. So you're telling me that the $197,000 land and water grant can be used to match the King County Conservation Futures grant?
Yes.
If you got the $200,000 Murdoch grant, that essentially would leave another $103,000 to raise to match the full King County Conservation Futures grant.
That's correct. And that is what happened essentially when the 6 acres was purchased in December. There was an earlier land and water grant that matched earlier King County Futures money. And that's how those 6 acres was purchased. But this is an additional new grant from both King County Futures and Land and Water.
Could I ask one question of staff? Pat Parkhurst, please.
You might want to stick around, Jeannie. We have more questions.
So
I see hands going up here, which you don't see. So
the King County Conservation Future grant that we received, are there any other projects that we might be able to use that grant money for besides North Creek Forest
So that
acquisition?
that grant was applied for specifically for the North Creek Forest.
Okay.
If for some reason that didn't happen, we could ask to have it transferred to something else, but at this time, we don't have another project that would be able to be used for.
Okay. And then obviously we want to be sensitive to staff time. We understand that your organization has a time commitment, but asking staff to draft this letter requires that they, put other things aside and then work on your letter. And so I guess I wanted to know from staff, is that a significant time request, or is it, can we use a letter previously and submit that? Are there any other considerations that I should be aware of?
So I was aware this request was coming, so I jumped ahead and drafted letters based on the Norcliffe letter, with in case council was ready to act. It's my understanding that the one application has to be submitted on the 6th of February, so it was time sensitive for them to get the one letter out.
So
Right.
Can I just ask one more question? So then the letter is ready to go. There's not a financial commitment on the part of the city to do this.
Correct. We already have the grants in hand.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Councilmember Lamb.
I just want to thank Mrs. Robinson and your organization for the work that you've done. I think in the future, and this is something that we discussed when your last speaker came, I think it'd be great to have a resolution that the council passes so that Pat doesn't have to sort of redo this every time. And I'm supportive of that coming back. But in light of the fact that this is a time-sensitive request, I'm supportive of having a letter sent to support this application, particularly the one that's in front of us. And then hopefully in the next month or so, we can have in March a resolution brought back that would support this. But I thank you for your work and look forward to a successful grant application.
Great, thank
And we really look forward to a memorandum of. We really look forward to a memorandum of understanding. That will be so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, Ms. Robinson, thank you so much. We'll take up this matter in just a moment. I have the next speaker on the agenda is Sandy Gwynn.
Good evening. It was a pleasure to hear how much progress has been made on the forest and that you are still supporting it. Tonight I'm, of course, here to talk about the Regional Fire Authority. I have been attending their committee meetings. They've adopted procedures identifying their regular meetings as the first and third Wednesday, I believe, or Thursday. First and third Thursday of every month is their regular meeting. With the holidays, I did not attend one of the meetings, and I went online to look at when their possible next meeting would be, and the minutes gave 2 dates. The first date passed. There was no posting of any meeting, so I figured it would be the second date. As it got closer, I saw no documents on the website for the agenda or anything. So I went down to the fire station in Woodinville and inquired about it, and they had advised me that both meetings were canceled. And I said, "Did you do a cancellation notice?" No. So that was fine. I know when the next meeting is. I'm going to be attending it. Mistakes do happen. People do get sick and go on vacation, and you have staff leaving, so things do drop through the cracks, so to speak. But then it got to thinking, the January 9th meeting was a special meeting. Was a special meeting notice published or processed according to the operating procedures? So my question to you tonight is, were the operating procedures followed in noticing the special meeting? I have put in a public records request to the Woodinville Fire District for all copies of special meeting notices. Now, the reason this is important, one is so that the public is aware. The state has put in just very few requirements of noticing for special meetings. Usually in the past it was to notify the participants on the committee or the council or the governing board of a special meeting. But the state legislature, I believe in 2012, had added a couple of requirements. One more reason why it's very important that these procedures are followed is that if they're not, any action taken invalidates, for example, a contract. And
Want to take 10 seconds
want me
to wrap it up?
to kind of wrap it up? Our city manager is to be signing this contract. And I really, having worked with Bob, I know he has a very high code of ethics standard, that if he felt that this, and I don't want to speak for him, but I would hope that if there was a violation of the notice of special meeting, that he will not sign this contract.
Well, I thank you so much for coming this evening.
You're welcome.
I don't have any further sign-ups, but is there anybody else from the public that would like to address the council tonight about general issues that aren't on the agenda, including 1418? No? All right, seeing none. Moving on to the consent agenda. One item was removed, which was item 1416. Is there a motion to pass the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Spivey. If everybody can place their vote. And if the clerk can display. So the consent agenda passes, which includes Agenda Bill 1415 and Agenda Bill 1417. So Councilmember Sandberg, you pulled 1416, which is the consider approval of supplemental agreement number 2 to the professional services agreement with Blue Line Group Incorporated for construction inspected services for the Multiply Boulevard West Side. That is the longest title I think we've ever had.
Thank you. So I had sent some questions this morning, and I'd like to have give staff the opportunity to respond to them.
Sure. We do have staff present, Mayor, that can respond to Councilmember Sandberg's questions that she submitted this morning, if the council would
Okay.
so wish.
Is it Steve? No?
Good evening, Council. Do you want me to start at the beginning?
Sure.
Okay, so the first question was, why were there two construction inspection firms, Blue Line and Parametrics, involved in the Phase 1 construction? And the reason we had two firms was because we initially thought we needed two inspectors. So Parametrics was providing a senior inspector and Blue Line was providing a junior inspector. And we also anticipated having full-time admin staff help. So we took a conservative approach because we didn't know how the contractor would schedule his work. In the event that he had two crews going, we just wanted to make sure that we had enough staff to monitor the work. So the next question was, when did Blue Line commence inspection work? And they started on June 17th, 2013. The next question was, did supplement agreement number 1 have a cost, or was it just a time extension? And the answer to that, it was just a time extension. The next question is, when will Phase 1 be completed? And we anticipate completion May 2014. The next question is, how is it that Parametrics is so much under budget, but Blue Line is over budget? Similar to my previous response, we utilized the Blue Line inspector more than we did the Parametrics inspector, but there were instances where we had some night work, so Parametrics provided the inspection at night. Are we anticipating a supplemental agreement with Parametrics? No, we are not. The next question is, did we get Public Works Trust Fund loan for this phase? And the answer is no. I think Tammy can elaborate on that.
When we found out there wasn't going to be funding from the state through the Public Works Trust Fund loan, we went ahead and added the funds for the multi-way through another bond issue back in the spring that was $9 million, I believe, including the multi-way boulevard. The funding for the debt service is the same as it would be for the Public Works Trust Fund loan, so it doesn't change the CFP in any way. The only thing it changed was the source of the funding.
Does that satisfy your answer?
Yep, thank you.
Do you have a motion or no?
I move to approve Agenda Bill 1416 as presented.
Great, thank you, Andy. Motion by Councilmember Sandberg, second by Councilmember Rayum, to pass the approval of supplemental agreement number 2 to the professional services agreement with the Blue Line Group for construction and inspection services for the Multi-Way Boulevard Phase 1, west side from northeast 183rd Street to northeast 188th. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And if the clerk can display. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the agenda. The next on the agenda is the public meeting, which is probably what many here in the audience are here for this evening. So I'd like to formally open the public hearing to discuss the proposed plan and code amendments, which together compromise the 2014 docket and initiation of formal consideration as warranted. We do have a staff presentation. Mr. Gary Hassler, our planning manager. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and members of the public. As the Mayor has already stated, this item is the 2014 docket of Plan and Code amendments. The docket is an annual Council review of suggested Plan and Code amendments and related proposed actions. Each year, staff brings the docket to the Council, and Council decides which items warrant formal initiation and the process path for each. That process path could be refer to the Planning Commission or other body for recommendation back to Council, or to retain for direct Council consideration. In addition, we ask that Council try to prioritize the items they do initiate. There are three major themes in the 2014 docket. The first is a Growth Management Act mandated 2015 periodic plan and code update, which I'll discuss in more detail in just a second. The second are two amendments requested by property owners or other private parties. One is a request from property owners in the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast sub-area, and the other is a request from North Shore School District. And then there are several staff-requested amendments. The action we're requesting that Council take tonight is for each item to determine whether to initiate, not initiate, or study further. And per code, the Council must initiate by motion. So you'll see that for each item that I cover, there's a staff recommendation, and essentially we're asking Council to make a motion based on that staff recommendation. And then for initiated items, we're asking Council to determine whether to refer to the Planning Commission or to retain for direct Council consideration, and then whether to assign a specific priority. And in your matrix on attachment 1 that I've provided, you'll see that the first column, A, is for 2014, B is 2015, and C is defer to a future time. The first item on the docket is the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. The Washington State Growth Management Act requires that the city periodically update its comprehensive plan and development regulations that implement the plan. In 2011, the state legislature established deadlines for the next periodic update, and in accordance with that schedule, our deadline for adoption of an updated plan and implementing regulations is June 30th, 2015. So we have to adopt an ordinance for this periodic plan and code update no later than June 30th, 2015. The primary purpose of the 2015 periodic plan and update is to ensure that local plans and regulations comply with all current requirements of the Growth Management Act. It's anticipated that the periodic plan and code update will comprise the bulk of the Planning Commission's work for all of 2014 and the early part of 2015, and the bulk of the Council's land use items for the first half of 2015. In the more detailed report that I submitted to you that includes the scope of work for the plan update, the very last page of that is an anticipated schedule. The major issues that we anticipate in the periodic plan and code update are as follows. First of all, we're required to accommodate all of our allocated population and employment growth. As Council is aware, we have a small, well, I won't say small, we have a residential capacity deficit of 3,554 persons in the Snohomish County portion of the city. We discussed this issue with Council last year and posited three potential, exploration of three potential land use scenarios to accommodate that deficit. And those are within the Canyon Park Business Center, the Country Village 527 sub-area, and a third one in the Shelton View Meridian and 3rd Avenue Southeast sub-area. A second major issue for the plan and code update is to incorporate the transfer of development rights into the land use element and potentially into the Canyon Park and or other sub-areas. Council will recall that last year we had community attributes do a transfer of development rights or a TDR analysis in the King County portion of the city because we had some funding available from King County to do that. The results of that were, to summarize very quickly, that there may be some potential for doing that in the downtown and North Creek sub-areas, but it would require some fairly, I think, extensive or at least complex revisiting of that downtown sub-area plan and possibly the North Creek sub-area plan. However, there appears to be a much greater potential for incorporating the transfer of development rights into the Canyon Park Business Center. And we currently are working with community attributes on expanding the study that was done in King County to the Snohomish County portion of the city. And we'll have those results available by the time, well before we get to the land use element and discuss that issue. A third item in the major issue for the plan and code update is the update of the housing element, in particular the background data and housing needs assessment. As with all data in the comprehensive plan, over time it becomes old and needs to be refreshed. ARCH is currently helping us to update the background data and the housing needs assessment, and we will revisit the housing element to do that. In addition, Council may recall that as part of the 2013 docket, you initiated code amendments relating to accessory dwelling units. We will fold those ADU regulation updates into the housing element of the plan. And ARCH is assisting with those regulations as well. We will need to coordinate with the plan with the 2015 through 2021 capital facilities plan. we will need to revisit the transportation element to be consistent with any changes to the land use and capital facilities elements. And as with all of the major plan elements, there's information within the transportation element that simply needs to be updated. In the same vein, we will update all other planning area-wide elements and sub-area plans to reflect changed conditions since the last major plan update in 2004. As far as the projected schedule for the plan update, just very briefly, again, we anticipate that the Planning Commission will begin its review of the planning area-wide elements this month, in fact, within 2 weeks of this meeting, and will probably take through the end of July to update the planning area-wide elements. The Landmark Preservation Board will be involved in the historic preservation element as well. And then from September through the end of February 2015, we anticipate that the sub-area plans will make their way through the Planning Commission. And then from March through the end of May in 2015, Council will review the Planning Commission's recommendation on the major plan elements and the sub-area plans. And by June 30th, 2015, again, we will need to adopt an ordinance for the plan update. So staff recommends that Council formally initiate the 2015 periodic plan and code update and assign the project to the Planning Commission and other boards as warranted for deliberation and recommendation back to Council. And even though the 2015 periodic plan and update, code update is required under state law, initiation by the Council formally advises the public that the update has begun and announces the scope of work for the project. The Growth Management Act requires us to have a public participation program, and this meeting really kicks that whole thing off and lets the public know we've begun the periodic plan and code update. So we would ask for a formal motion from Council at an appropriate time to initiate the plan and code update. Mayor, did you want to take this item by item, or would you like me to go through the entire presentation and then revisit each item, or how would you like to proceed?
I would go through the whole presentation, then if council members we find that there's more interest from a certain item, we can go back to that.
Great, thank you. The second item on the docket is a property owner request within the Fitzgerald and 35th Southeast sub-area. Council may recall that in the recent past, a number of property owners in the vicinity of 39th Avenue Southeast and 236th Street Southeast within the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast sub-area recently contacted Bothell Community Development Department staff to express concern that the current R5400A LID NICFU CHAPA zoning regulations applicable to the area are discouraging development of their properties. And just for those who may be not familiar with the acronyms, LID stands for Low Impact Development, and NICFU CHAPA stands for the North Creek Fish and Wildlife Critical Habitat Protection Area. After talking with property owners and interviewing 3 developers who have also talked with property owners in the area, staff concluded that some plan and code amendments may be warranted to reduce the uncertainty developers have identified as a reason why they have not pursued development within this area. And we anticipate that proposed plan and code amendments would include revisions to the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast sub-area plan itself, as well as to BMC 1252, which is the sub-area regulations. And we anticipate that those would likely provide more clarity to the regulations, reduce the complexity of regulations pertaining to forested cover, amend the provisions pertaining to wildlife corridors, better identify expectations regarding the 39th Avenue Southeast improvements, and identify and amend or eliminate duplicative regulations. Staff recommends that Council initiate consideration of amendments to land use policies and implementing zoning regulations in the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast sub-area and assign to the Planning Commission for deliberation and recommendation to Council as part of the 2015 periodic plan and code update. If Council elects to initiate these amendments, we will it makes sense to visit them as part of the sub-area plan review, which again would likely be in the second half of this year. The next item on the docket is a staff proposed amendment regarding the number of unrelated persons that may live in a single-family dwelling. BMC 1206 permits up to 8 unrelated persons to live together in a single residence. That regulation has been in place at least as long as I can remember. However, recently the city has received several emails, and I believe council has received them also, relating to this regulation, citing concerns regarding single-family dwellings in their neighborhood. The concerns center around issues with parking, traffic generation, and the character of single-family neighborhoods. Given the concerns that we've received, staff recommends that council direct the Planning Commission to study the issue, determine whether any amendments are warranted to the current regulations, and report back to council in conjunction with the 2015 periodic plan and code update. This issue would be considered as part of the updates of either the housing element or land use element, or both. The next item on the docket is an additional property owner request, and it's from the North Shore School District. The school district has submitted a request to the city, and you have a copy in your packet, requesting that the city exempt portable classroom buildings from paying traffic mitigation fees, as are currently required by BMC 17045. The North Shore School District states in their letter that a number of other jurisdictions, including King and Snohomish counties, the cities of Bellevue and Mill Creek, do not collect such fees, recognizing the temporary nature of portable classroom buildings. Staff recommends that council initiate consideration of this proposed code amendment and retain it for direct council deliberation in 2014. This is a code amendment that likely would not be folded into the major plan and code update, but we would probably bring to council as a separate item later in this year. An additional item on the docket is another staff proposed amendment regarding the Shorelines Board. Staff proposed and council initiated in September of last year code amendments to consider transferring the duties of the Shorelines Board to the Planning Commission for reasons of efficiency. In initiating the proposed code amendments, council elected to retain the item for direct consideration. We've placed this item on the 2014 docket to memorialize council's previous action from last year, and we anticipate that the item will come back to council in the second quarter of 2014 as a separate item. And I believe the last item on the docket is a staff proposed amendment regarding preschools in single-family zones. Currently, preschools are permitted use in commercial zones and a conditional use in residential zones per BMC 1206-070. In fact, not just preschools, but most school facilities. Council may recall that last year, at the end of last summer, the city received a number of complaints over a new preschool in the neighborhood just south of Bothell High School on 92nd Avenue Northeast. Most of those concerns centered around the issue of the school's compatibility within a single-family neighborhood. And Council may recall that was the Lake Forest Preschool that's now known as the Bothell Family Preschool. In responding to the neighbors' concerns last year, staff proposed bringing the item forward as part of the 2014 docket for Council to consider initiating potential code amendments to address the concerns that were raised at that time. And I'll note that since the school has begun operations, since the CUP was completed, the conditions were met, and the school was constructed, we haven't received any complaints regarding operation of the school. So, because of the large scale and scope of the work associated with the 2015 periodic plan and code update, staff is recommending bringing this item back as part of the 2015 docket of plan and code amendments for consideration at that time. So, because of the amount of work on our plate, just simply delaying this one for a year. And I'll also note that with the exception of Lake Forest Preschool or the Bothell Family Preschool, this really hasn't been an issue with any other preschool that we've permitted. Before I take questions, just a little piece of housekeeping business with regards to this docket item. Council has received a letter and a petition from Ms. Janet Rouse regarding Bothell's adult entertainment regulations, and in particular two espresso stands, the Beehive Espresso and Paradise Coffee Espresso. I know that Council has copy of those on the dais, but I will formally enter these as Exhibit 1 to this public hearing. And I believe that immediately before this meeting, Council also received a code amendment request regarding a dog owner code of conduct. I haven't had a chance to read through that yet, so I'm not entirely sure what it would involve, but it appears to involve Title VI and potentially Title 11.20 in the Administration of Development Regulations. So I will enter that as Exhibit 2 to the docket public hearing. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions that council might have about any of the docket items.
I think we will jump on that right after the public has an opportunity to come address the council as well in the presentation. So I have a sign-up sheet here. I have 2 people signed up so far. First is Mr. Tom Berry. Tom, nice to see you this evening. I did.
Good evening. Do you have my address right?
We do.
Okay. In a recent conversation with Eric Campbell of Cam West, he was talking about the document that was sent out by staff after 3 developers spoke with him. And I'm going to quote him. He said, "I gave the document a quick scan, and while the memo outlines a number of issues, it does not accurately describe the most significant issues, primarily that a regional road is being required to be currently funded by land owners and developers. This is, of course, tied closely with sewer availability." So, as a point of interest, he talked about things like nexus and proportionality. Number 2, a personal note. Of course, the Berry family is part of the critical species habitat zone 1, the topic that's been discussed here tonight. My son just turned 40. He has a rare brain disorder called MSA, multiple systems atrophy. There's no known cause, there's no known cure. The prognosis is rather rapid deterioration, and we're faced with having to provide for him. Care for him is now our prime goal. We need the resources of the land sale that we've been pursuing for a long time. With what would be provided for our retirement before we became part of the critical species habitat, we will use now to provide for our son, hopefully. In fact, this year marks 17 years since we officially initially applied for a rezone hearing, and the quest continues. As Eric stated, the landowners of Zone 1 are the entities supporting the experiment. In the case of the Berry family, fate and the experiment have become very expensive. We're begging Bothell to move forward with this. Even in a perfect situation, it will likely be up to 2 years before we can realize the resources if we sell the land. And as they say, time and tide waits for no one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I'm certainly sorry to hear about your son. Mr. Terry Clem. There you are.
I'm Terry Clem, 23415 39th Avenue Southeast in Bothell. And I just have a couple of observations, and they kind of take the form of thanks. The original idea for our homeowners up there on 39th and the Fitzgerald sub-area was to make this as flexible as possible for us, and that was a result of the R5400A. And it is flexible, and we appreciate it, but the addition of the LID restrictions on there really killed any opportunity for the R5400A. So that's where we are today, and as Tom said, after a number of years, we've gone through a number of hoops. We've had developers offer us money. I personally have gone to the 89th day of earnest money out of 90 and had it pulled back. The number of lots have dwindled from a potential high 6 years ago of about 29 for my property that I have, down to about 17 today under the conditions. So as was previously stated in the overhead here, a number of us got together with the city not too long ago, and I just want to say I was impressed with their attitude towards us, and particularly the speed that they reacted to our request. It's not easy to get 3 different developers at 3 different times together in a short period of time, but they did that. And I think in addition to that, just the developers showing up continues to show the interest that there's hope there, that they're still interested, that they want to move forward with this. So I thank Bill Weislogle and Bruce Blackburn for their timely manner in resolving that and getting the memorandum out to all of us. My hope and my request is to the council that you'll see fit to continue this momentum right now that we've got going at this particular point in time, and take into consideration the well, I'll use one word that was in a staff email, was the word onerous. The onerous regulations and restrictions that are on our property up there right now, that we can move forward and eliminate some of those and get them down to a workable standpoint to where developers will become more interested. And I ask that you do this in a rapid motion and not wait until 2015. We've waited too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment on this agenda item this evening? Sir, if you come forward and state your name. Your address is optional.
Okay, I'm David Bain, and like to suggest that when you're doing this, you consider a program for transfer of development rights, and to try to identify portions of the city that we'd either try to keep undeveloped or even de-develop, and identify other portions of the city that we may choose to allow denser development than currently planned. So I think that would let the city increase park space. It would make it give it higher ecological function for wildlife, and if we have higher density parts of the city, that would work better with mass transit. So might make our transportation more efficient as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Any further comment? Sir, if you come forward and state your name.
Hello, my name is Dave Vliet. I live in the Maywood Hills area of Bothell, and I was wondering if I could, if you could follow up the person who presented it earlier about the shorelines and why it would be incorporated in with the Land Commission and the inefficiencies involved in that. I guess that was with the Shorelines Board, I guess.
Okay. And did you say Leet, your last name?
V-L-I-E-T.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further comments from the public? Great. Seeing none, we typically would close the public hearing at this point. What I'd like to do is just open it up to council for questions, and then we can address the public hearing portion of that after we have some questions. Great. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I hope that before we finalize this docket tonight, we have a chance to go back and look at the docket for this year, or the one we approved for this year. It's in our packet of things that you've progressed on and things that are still hanging. I think we have a lot on our plate tonight, so I think it's important that we prioritize things that can be delayed and things that need to be moved up on the docket. It doesn't sound like the staff's going to be able to do all of these, so I think it's important that we look what's currently on our plate that we can set aside or is not a high priority, and that we can move some of these up as a priority. The question to Gary is, the approval of our comprehensive plan, Gary, is what, June 2015 or something?
Yes, correct.
Is there any opportunity to get an extension on approval of that document?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so we're...
The June 2015 date has actually already been extended once because of this was originally due in 2013, I believe, or 2013, and because the economy tanked in 2008, the legislature extended it by 2 years. So the 2015 date is now firm.
Okay. So I think that's even more important if the staff, you've given us a list, and I guess you've given us a recommendation for these items that are pending for us tonight, but I would be interested in the staff's comments on those items that are that were on the 2014 docket or 13 docket, and those that can be set aside. I mean, there's some that you've accomplished, but there's some that are still pending. I think we've had at least 2 or 3 come to us tonight, new ones. The one on the adult entertainment zone. I'd like to see those considered or discussion by the council on those. And again, your plate is overflowing. We know that, and so it will be interesting to prioritize these and see what we can accomplish. It's my recollection that the Fitzgerald sub-area, Nifachaka area, was that zoning and things was put in place in 2008. Is that correct?
2006.
2006. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been almost 8 years.
Okay. And I see that is a real priority to some residents out there who have been waiting many, many years to dispose of their property. And so in my mind, that's a high priority that I would like to see moved up on the list. And ideally, I'd like to see it considered in the first half of this year. I don't know what that does to your schedule. I don't know how that does with approval. But I think even if the discussion can get started, it may give some direction to potential developers if they've got some idea of what may be coming down the pipe, and that maybe they can move forward with some more discussions with the property owners on acquisition and future development things. So I think it's important that we get that discussion started very early and hopefully give everyone a chance to see what those are and respond to those. So I would, I guess this is a question period here. Let me just double check on a couple of my questions here. The downtown sub-area plan or amendments are to be completed the first half of 2014. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'll note for council that regarding those items, and I believe it's the last attachment to this agenda bill, regarding those items that you have initiated in previous dockets that we're currently working through, and there's a whole raft of downtown ones that really fall into 2 major groups. A lot of those have been to Planning Commission. Some have come to council for study session already, and most of the rest we have scheduled for you for study session in February and March. So I think we're making good progress on those, and we feel comfortable that the status of those that we've shown you in that matrix is doable.
And so looking at that information, some of those that even indicate in the staff report that those could be completed by the first quarter of this year, I think.
We believe so, yes.
And so hopefully that's going to take some things off your plate. The wayfinding signs for business, that's currently being considered.
The Planning Commission has heard that and made a recommendation, so we'll bring that to you for study session I believe that's coming to you in March.
Okay.
And then I'm guessing either one public hearing after that or potentially no public hearing, depending on council's view of it. But that's another one I believe we can finish up fairly quickly. The same goes with the fowl regulations that we've been working on, the chicken regulations.
Right.
So I think there are a number of items from the 2012 and 13 dockets that we will have cleared off by mid-year.
And it appears that some of those that have not had too much action on them to this point are ones that could be set aside temporarily for some higher priority items.
Yes, you'll see some of those that we've noted that they're to be scheduled depending on staff resources. And those are the ones I think that in our mind we probably need to hold off on, and that's how we've tried to identify them in that matrix for you. Because of various staff resources, not just in CD, but also in Public Works and legal, that there are several items that we may need to just hold off a little longer.
And the setback requirements for the mobile homes in the Holly Hills and Woodcrest Park area, those are nearing completion, I think, also?
Yes, an ordinance for those is coming, along with the other miscellaneous housekeeping code amendments, is coming back to you in early March. So those will be done March 4th, I believe. I just placed probably a half dozen or so items on the projected agenda with the city clerk that you probably haven't shown up on your projected agenda yet. But the next projected agenda that comes out should show a fair number of those items coming to you very shortly.
The question on the adult entertainment zone, that consideration, does staff have any indication of the amount of time or how that would be processed? Or
that particular item, I'm going to defer to the city attorney since it's as much a legal issue as.
Could you repeat the question for me?
Sorry, Joe.
The request for consideration of the, I guess it's the baristas or the coffee shops and how that affects our adult entertainment zone and changes to the code on that. What would be involved in that potential code amendment or review of that item?
Well, adult entertainment is the adult entertainment code is potentially the most time-consuming and explosive issue that you could take up because of the tremendous amount of liability that attaches to it for cities. It is a protected, anytime you venture into an area where there's constitutionally protected activity and you're seeking to regulate freedom of expression, freedom of speech, you are, there are a number of court-mandated, constitutionally based steps that you have to jump through, studies that have to be done, and constitutional issues that have to be carefully be considered. We've done that once with the current adult entertainment code that we have. There are some minor tweaks. One minor tweak that I know of that is could be done probably fairly easily, but then it's not going to in any way, shape, or form address the issues that people are concerned, have expressed concern about. It would take a major revamp of our adult entertainment code to even consider a more strict interpretation of adult entertainment in the city. So it is a large, I guess that's a lot to say. It's a very large job and time-consuming, expensive, and we may go through it and not gain any ground because we have a fairly we have an adult entertainment code that sort of it meets the standard of what cities have come to and been allowed to regulate for. There's some, again, one small tweak that could be made that would help with enforcing it slightly. But again, that is not really what is being asked for here.
Okay. Thank you. One last question. On the request by the school district for traffic in relation to portables and collection of traffic mitigation fees, do we have a time period on portables at these school facilities?
By time period,
how long they can be there? How long is a portable?
That's a good question. We have I believe an interlocal agreement that goes back to, I think, 2000 with the school district. And they periodically come in and they move portables around as their student needs require. But some of those portables sit there for years. However, I think if you ask the school district, they'll tell you that in their capital plans, they are temporary buildings. They don't ever intend them to be permanent classrooms. So they do move around, but they do sit there a long time.
Right. My experience with some other agencies is that portables last a long time. And
I know the school district has plans for a new high school, and they're hoping that will alleviate the need for many of the portables they currently utilize. But as they said in their letter to you, it will not completely alleviate that need.
Right. And the fact that as we add the portables, the impacts come with those portables, the additional traffic and attendance and all those things that go along with, because they need those, there is an increase. So some of the impacts are there the day that another portable is put up. I appreciate the school district's concern that, you know, they are overflowing in a lot of areas, and this is a temporary situation, but my past experience shows that they are not temporary. They stay there an awfully long time, if not permanently. So just a question I had about that. That's all I have at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Anybody? Questions for staff? Councilmember Sandberg?
I talked this afternoon with Bruce Blackburn, and if you didn't come up with the answer to the question, that's fine. I think then it speaks to what the Planning Commission could do if we do put this on their work program. But it relates to the question of the 39th Avenue connector, and it seems to be that is a really important issue for developers interested in those properties. And it seemed to me that that the 39th Avenue connector dropped off of our CFP, or at least certainly was deprioritized. I think we had conversations about that, and it might even just appear in the TIP, but low as priority as well. Do you know anything about what our future plans are for the 39th connector?
I'm sorry, Bruce Blackburn, Senior Planner. I was not able to do a thorough analysis on that in the time I had. However, it still is in the comprehensive plan, and so it is still a roadway that is planned for construction through the various methodologies the city uses to do those kind of things.
Okay, thanks. That's all the questions I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Sandberg. Anyone else? Great. Deputy Mayor?
Jump back up there, Bruce. I want to follow up on that. I, too, had a question on 39. How much of a game changer is it if we take that out of our planning?
Boy, you know what? That's one that was coordinated with Snohomish County. It was an important roadway connection.
Snohomish County's, they had got no money, and they're not going to give us any in the future. We all know that. So,
yeah, well, that's one that probably is a good thing to have a debate upon, and maybe have the Public Works Director provide, because it's primarily a transportation item.
Good evening, Council. To address that, I think at the very least we would need to model the system without the connector to ensure that we would have the connectivity that we would need, particularly if we're looking at having additional density throughout the city. So I don't know that we can just make the call as far as its necessity right here at this juncture, but certainly something that we would look at.
I think that would be a great discussion to have as to that and some options. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb or Graham? Go ahead.
So I wanted to follow up on the portable discussion. What is the current, I mean, are we currently assessing transportation fees on portables?
Yes, I believe we are.
But how much do we, because it's been, I mean, I know for a number of years we sort of abated collecting transportation mitigation from them, or is that true or no?
We don't collect school mitigation fees.
Okay.
But we do collect traffic mitigation fees.
So what would that cost for a school per portable?
To be honest, Councilmember Lamb, I'm not sure what that cost is per portable off the top of my head.
Because my reaction was very similar to Councilmember Evans, and I know that portables have been there at my kids' elementary school the entire time they've been there. They've been there before the time that they come, and they will probably be there after the time they're there. And I know there's a fair amount of consternation in the community about the use of portables. And as Councilmember Evans indicated, just as a matter of equity, when they're there, they create a traffic impact. Do we do that? Do we collect that fee on an annual basis, or is it a one-time fee? Or
again, I'm not sure, Councilmember Lamb, but certainly if council were to initiate this item, those are issues we would look at with the Planning Commission in terms of how much do we collect, how often do we collect them, what is the total amount we collect per year on portables, and those would be items that certainly would go towards the commission making a recommendation back to you.
But do we know whether or not it's, or I guess do we know tonight whether or not it's an annual fee or if it's a fee that's collected on a one-time basis?
I believe it's a one-time fee when they place a portable, when they pull a permit for a portable.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Ram.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I believe the Public Works Director wanted to weigh in on maybe had an answer to my question.
Great.
Thanks.
Regarding the
impact fees for portables. Until just recently, the city has had an interlocal agreement with the school district related to the portables, and what it called for was an annual accounting of the number of students in each sort of elementary school, junior high, and high school. And the idea was that once those capacities were reached, then the impact fees would be paid for students beyond that threshold, so that it was anticipated to be an annual payment. That hasn't been happening, so we're currently in discussions with the school district regarding that interlocal agreement.
And when you say that hasn't been happening, is that we haven't been provided the information?
Well, there's some confusion as to if the information's been provided according to the interlocal agreement, and there have not been any
payments made.
Okay. To my knowledge.
All right, thank you.
All right, back to you.
So on the GMA update, the 2015 update, are the same staff that would work on that the ones that review development permits?
No. Our long-range planning staff or community planning staff would primarily work on the plan update. Development review staff would still be assigned to development review.
And same with the Fitzgerald sub-area information. Do we have stormwater engineers for both that and be able to keep on top of the development applications?
Yes. Our long-range staff would primarily probably task the Fitzgerald amendments and pull in engineering expertise where necessary. But we have a fair bit of experience on staff in the long-range staff with LID and LID development. So I think we could handle that in-house too.
Okay. In regard to the TDR stuff, so are we looking at both being a receiving area and a sending area, or just one or the other?
Primarily a receiving area. Certainly under King County's program, and I believe also under Snohomish County's new program, the sending areas are primarily rural resource lands.
Right. And so we're looking at that for just the Snohomish County side because we have a surplus of housing, or is that part of the review?
Well, when CIA finishes their analysis of the Snohomish County portion of the city, we will have an analysis from them for both sides, both counties' portions of the city. And at that time, we'll have a better picture of where it makes most sense to potentially apply a TDR program. We're allocated a total number of TDRs by PSRC. So without seeing the econometric numbers, we really won't know until we get the Snohomish County picture where it would make most sense to place our allocation or what percentage of our allocation.
So if we did that, so you said I think it was somewhere around 3,000 that we are estimating for residences or homes that we need to provide.
We're under 3,600 persons, probably just over 1,600 households.
So then if we also created that to be a receiving area, we'd actually have to go beyond that. At 3,600, we would need to accommodate more people, right?
Not necessarily. You might recall that we posited 3 potential land use scenarios last year to cover that almost 3,600 persons population deficit. Our thought is that those land use scenarios would account for the amount of population we need to accommodate. Where TDR would fit into the picture would be, for example, if we add a residential component to the Canyon Park Business Center, we could make it a condition of development of residential units within that area that developers include TDR as a component of that, and that would potentially have tax increment benefits to the city. So the TDR itself doesn't necessarily adjust the amount of population we have to accommodate. It's simply a tool that we can use as part of accommodating that population under those different scenarios that we'll be looking at.
So it wouldn't be transferred of residential densities outside or in the sending area.
Well,
to Canyon or the Snohomish County portion of the city.
Typically, when you agree to receive TDRs from a rural area, you're saying will allow you to have additional density or more floors. That's the incentive to get the TDRs into your city. But given that we currently have no residential component on the Canyon Park Business Center, that's where the opportunity lies, because we can craft the TDR regulations essentially starting from base zero. Does that make sense? Versus if we do it in the downtown plan area, we already have a residential limit on how much you can develop downtown. We would need to adjust that in some fashion to accommodate additional units through TDR. So the Canyon Park area really represents a really clean opportunity to include TDR and accommodate the additional population that we need to because of growth targets. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess I'm under the understanding that TDR is usually an increase over what you already zoned for. So if we go through the comp plan process and say we're going to accommodate all the growth we need, and then we, on top of that, want to do a TDR, we would have to accommodate even more than that, I guess is what.
That's correct. But given that we currently have no residential component in Canyon Park, we would be able to craft the density or the regulations pertaining to a residential component there with TDR in mind.
Okay. I think I'm following you now. So for the Fitzgerald area, also, let me make sure I've got all that. Oh, one more thing. In the packet it has the GMA required stuff, and so there's additional stuff that like the Department of Commerce recommends a list of things as well. But there's really 3 things that we have to do as a requirement of GMA, and if we just kept our code update to those 3 things, would that really reduce the scope of the effort? You don't have the packet in front of you, but you want me to read it to you? What the
no,
things are?
I know what you're referring to. Essentially, in the work plan that we've presented to you, we haven't gone much beyond that, to be honest. I know there are other things listed, but essentially we are trying to accomplish those 3 requirements under GMA, which is accommodate the population, and the other 2 things that have slipped my mind. But apart from that, really we're not going very far beyond that. The TDR study is something that we have already been looking at, and we believe we can fold that in. The inventories we're updating anyway, and then with the remainder of the work in the sub-area plans and the major plan elements, a lot of that we're really going to restrict to just updating what is old and what needs to be updated. So we're not really proposing wholesale changes to the major plan elements or the sub-area plans, with the exception of the 3 land use scenarios that I've already talked about. So for most of the sub-area plans, we're going to recommend taking out stuff that's no longer applicable or out of date, updating things that need to be updated, and probably not touching land use designations at all. So we believe that we can accommodate the work program that we presented to you, that it meets the minimum GMA requirements and doesn't go too much further past that, because we really don't have the time or the resources to get too much further past that.
Okay. Am I dragging on too long? Are we doing okay for time, Mayor?
I don't know that you're putting everybody to sleep in the audience.
All right.
I only see one.
Just one? Okay, good. So last time in 2004, when we were mandated to do this update by the state, did they also provide consultant dollars to support the city in doing the update?
They did. They provided some consultant dollars. It wasn't very much, and it certainly didn't cover all of the consultant needs that we had at the time.
Do we feel we need a consultant this time, and if so, is the state providing any funding for this update?
They are providing some funding. The dates for applying for that funding have passed. We did not apply for them. We believe that we can handle this update in-house.
Okay.
Although I will add that the Public Works has some dollars to hire a consultant for transportation traffic modeling, so they'll be consulting that out. But as far as I'm aware, I think that's the only piece that we're consulting out.
Okay. And then just one last piece, and it's kind of more along just piling on with everybody else about the 39th connector and how that must be pretty daunting for a developer to take a 2-lane road and go to a 5-lane road, and whether that's a wild card or not is really pretty unfair to the property owners that are impacted by that road. So I hope that we can look at that as part of the transportation model and also accommodate potentially changing what we currently have on the books. And since I think I'm a know-it-all about stormwater, I'll wait for the Fitzgerald part to talk about the low-impact development piece. So I'm done.
Cool. Thanks. Hopefully, I was just chastising you just a little bit. All right. Thank you, Andy, or Councilmember Rayum. So laying out how I would like for this to go tonight, I would like to have a discussion on each item that we have in here, come collectively to a decision whether we're going to consider it, if we consider it, when we like to have it considered, and who considered by the council or by planning commission. So we'd start with number 1 on here. We go through all of those. If there's any that any council member would like to add to that, we can discuss those at the end. After we get through all the items, I'd like to have a potential motion to close public hearing, and then after that, I would look to council for a motion for this agenda item to be passed or debated, fail, whatever vote, how it goes. This would be the time. We've already just asked questions. We're going to discuss the matters as a council. I like to keep any further questions to just questions of clarification of staff. After we do close the public hearing, we go deliberate as a council. That's not a time for questions directed directly to the staff. So we just did that. So let's just jump on the first item. Oh, and for clarity, because I did mention earlier the North Creek letter and potential resolution. We'll take that up just after this item. And then when following that item, the Sound Cities recommendation discussion would be following that. And we have no other items on the agenda this evening, no executive session. Okay? So the first item would be item number 1, the periodic plan amendment for the Growth Management Act, known as the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. So council recommends that we address this in 2015, and that would be addressed to the Planning Commission. So is everybody in Councilmember Lamb?
I support that recommendation.
Okay. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Spivey?
I'm not sure that they are putting it off to 2015.
They're going to initiate. It says
they're just saying
recommendation.
initiate the 2015 periodic plan and code update. So I'm guessing this would start this year.
It would start in about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. So our hope would be initiate and go to Planning Commission. Is that all the direction you'd be looking for?
Essentially, the staff recommendation, I think, is a fairly good start for a motion from council if you care to use the staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation is that the council formally initiate the 2015 periodic plan and code update and assign the project to the Planning Commission, with joint meetings as warranted with the Landmark Preservation Boards, Park and Recreation, and Shorelines Board, to deliberate and recommend back to the council. Even though the periodic plan and code update is required under state law, initiation by the council formally advises the public that the update has begun and announces the scope of work for the project. So it doesn't specifically say it's happening in 2 weeks.
No, that's correct. But there is a schedule, a proposed schedule attached to the staff report for this item that shows it starting in February.
Okay. Great.
So as with Councilmember Lamb, I would recommend go with the staff recommendation.
Okay. That's 2. Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Sandberg, Councilmember Rayum. So that's unanimous support to move forward with the staff recommendation for item number 1. Item number 2 is in regards to the property owner concerns regarding the development potential of property located within Fitzgerald 35th Southeast sub area. Is there any discussion on that, Councilmember Lamb?
Thank you, Mayor. I would propose that we initiate this, that we retain it with the City Council, and that it be given a priority A, which in our code is initiation in 2014.
Okay, so that's Council A in 2014.
And the reason that I say that, if we can speak to that at this time, is that I came on this council 10 years ago, and this is something that has languished for a very, very long time. And when we first started doing the code amendments, and it's something we do every year, they would tag them for the time that the requests have been initiated. And this is one that has been around for a very, very long time. And I think the people in that area have been very patient and have waited for a long time. And I think it would be appropriate. As I understand it, there's been no development under this regulation that was passed 8 years ago, and I think it would be appropriate to look at this, to initiate it, to retain it with council, and to begin it this year.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Sandberg.
I would also support that recommendation. I think there are some policy issues that are best retained here and discussed at council, especially the 39th Avenue connector, to make sure that we have a consistent vision between the TIP, the CFP, and the comprehensive plan. And I think ultimately that's going to be a policy decision that would be guided by data provided by Public Works. And I have a lot of experience in personal history since I participated a lot in the original code change from R40,000 to this new designation. And I think there were really good intentions with that code change. But I also see that there is room for improvement so that there is some predictability for developers. And I think the City Council has the knowledge and the ability to craft something and to do it more quickly than having it go through the Planning Commission process, and they're already going to be tasked with the major plan update.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Councilmember Evans?
Yes, I would support that also and emphasize the A priority. I think if there's the quicker we can get going on this, realizing we may not finish it as quickly as we'd like to, but at least if we can get some information going that the developers can have input into, that may give them some ability to confidence to move forward with the owners on some development here. So, and it's been said that this is, I know this, when I came on the council in 2008, this issue was there, and I can tell you that nothing's happened in that area other than nothing. The road is a I guess I'm hesitant in one way to, well, we'll discuss the road, but for it to just go away, I'm a little concerned about that. I do think it's an important corridor through there that we need to maintain. I think Council or Deputy Mayor Spivey's mentioned a couple times, could we look at a redesign of that somehow? And it was a very expensive road. I do think we need that connection through there. But if nothing else, if the developers could get some kind of idea of what they may be required of the city, whatever that range is, that would be at least something that they could include in their discussion. So I would support moving that up and keeping it with the council as a priority A.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Rayam or Deputy Mayor Spivey? Yeah, Rayam?
I'm great with the recommendation. I just wanted to make sure that we do include, because in the council packet it doesn't say anything about the 39th connector being part of the discussion. So obviously that's going to be in there now, but I just want to emphasize as well that I think that's a big part of the issue. And I also think that the another issue too is it was a really good intended code, and it was spoken to that by the developers. Actually, I thought that was interesting in the documentation in our packet. I think we're in a different generation or a different era now where that code was before its time, if you will, on stormwater management and trying to build less environmentally impacting development. And there's conflicting code now that exists just from a design standard alone that really would do a lot of good to make sure that the code is meeting the stormwater design code. The Nick Champa Fitzgerald code is meeting the stormwater design code. So I do look forward to this coming back to council and appreciate that we're taking on instead of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Councilmember Rayam.
I support the current recommendation.
Of Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Okay. As do I. So that's unanimous. Jointly, it would be for retaining a council as a high priority here in 2014. The third item on the agenda is, I believe it's the unrelated persons that may live in a single dwelling. Does anybody want to take up conversation on this?
I support staff's recommendation.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor supports the staff recommendation.
I also support the staff's recommendation. Which is, just for clarity, is to initiate to refer to the Planning Commission to have it be on 2015.
Okay. Any other further comments? Councilmember Sandberg.
I also support the recommendation, and I think it's reasonable to fold in this discussion of the number of unrelated adults in with accessory dwelling units as a part of the housing element updates. I think that's another reason to fold it in.
I'd be okay with that.
Councilmember Evans? Are you okay? Okay. So that's 5 council members in favor. I am not in favor of this item. So that would be, the majority is saying they would like to initiate, they would like it to go to the Planning Commission in 2015. Okay. The fourth item on the agenda, yes?
I was going to speak to the fourth
Okay,
item
great.
on the agenda.
Councilmember Lamb?
So I do not support initiating this code amendment.
This is the one
This is
regarding
the portables. This is at the request in Orchard School District. You know, I, as a student in a public school, in a primary school, attended in portables. The portable that I attended, 30 some odd years ago is still there, is still being used. I think this is, the Public Works Director alluded to the fact that there may be some issues going back and forth in terms of mitigation and whatnot, but I don't support that. If the students are there, it is an impact and it should be collected, and I don't support initiating this particular amendment. I don't think we should spend any more time on it.
Okay. Councilmember Sandberg? You're nodding
Agreed.
in agreement? Councilmember Ram? Okay. Councilmember Evans agrees.
I agree also.
And Deputy Mayor, as do I. So that's a no, do not initiate. Item number 5 is the consideration of transferring the Shoreline Board responsibilities to the Planning Commission. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councilmember Lamb?
I support this code amendment. One thing that I would support in conjunction with this also is restoring $100 of the stipend to the Planning Commission. I think that was a budget-driven measure to eliminate the stipend in its entirety. Our Planning Commission does good work, and I think that the Shorelines Board meets so infrequently, and I think had become arguably too specialized and too focused towards one particular viewpoint. And I think that the Planning Commission has a broader perspective to be able to incorporate our shorelines regulations with the other regulations that are in our cities. So I would support initiating this, and I would support the staff recommendation on this.
And the staff recommendation, as I understand, is to retain here council
Yes.
and docket in the first or second quarter of 2014.
Yes.
Okay.
To be initiate, CC, and then priority A.
Perfect. Anybody else like to speak to that? This is number
And for
5.
clarity, this is number 5, code amendment to consider transferring Shorelines Board responsibility to the Planning Commission.
Councilmember Evans?
I thought I read in the staff report here, we obviously just passed the Shorelines document, and I think it's good for, 6-7 years or something? So I guess if we're set on this, it's a good document right now. I do support the idea of it going to the Planning Commission, but I really don't know why we even need to consider this right now, because the plan is good and is in place for the next 6-7 years. So how high of a priority is this really? I mean, is this? I support it going to the Planning Commission, but I don't think we need to make that decision now, because the plan is in place for quite some time now, unless somebody can correct me on that.
Well, I can contribute some thoughts to it. Staff, from my understanding, doesn't perceive that there's work necessarily that a Shorelines Board would be doing for several years. So if there's anything that may come up, then we would have that body that's already existing with people appointed to it that could take up those responsibilities. But as far as a major plan, it is not due for, I believe, 7 years. Yes, Mr. Hassler?
I could clarify for council. Council has previously initiated this item last year. And staff's thought was that currently there are 4 members on the Shoreline Board. So rather than go through an appointment process for 3 members who will never do anything, our thought was, let's eliminate the board now. If something does come up, it can go to Planning Commission.
So, Councilmember Evans, do you?
That's fine. Like you say, I support the clarification of that. I just didn't think there's going to be any action on this for a while, but I do support moving it to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Councilmember Sandberg.
I don't support moving forward with this code amendment. It's true that the main work item that the Shorelines Hearing Board works on is the Shoreline Master Plan update, and that's just been completed. But there could be other instances where a code or a plan amendment might be forwarded to them for their consideration. In fact, the language that we had in the staff recommendation for item number 1, which is the 2015 plan update, is to forward to the Landmark Hearings Board and Parks and Recreation Board and the Shorelines Hearings Board as needed. And so there could be a situation where the Shorelines Hearing Board could weigh in on a matter that isn't just related to the Shoreline Master Plan update. So I think it's a good opportunity to, another opportunity for interested citizens to be involved in their community. And I don't at this point see the point of disbanding it, especially if we're going into a major plan update and we could use that expertise.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Deputy Mayor, or, yeah, Councilmember Ram.
Yeah, I don't support moving this forward as well. There's a couple reasons. One being that I think the Shoreline Board serves a good purpose. I think suspending the Shoreline Board might be a good approach. I know the last Shoreline Board we put together for the update, there was shoreline landowners that were put on the board right when they did the process, and then they also had a good representation of people that really were concerned about the Shoreline Board. Not that the Planning Commission wouldn't be, but it seemed like a really good specialized group last time. And then I also have the fear, because I was on the Planning Commission while they were doing the Shoreline Board, and having the two workloads put on a volunteer group of people from the community at the same time could be really onerous and a lot of work. So I'd rather than eliminate the Shoreline Board, perhaps consider suspending it. But as written, I don't really support moving this forward.
Great, thank you. Can we hear Bill Weislogo?
The suggestion in the staff report was that rather than suspend the Shorelines Board, in 7 years, when the next update comes, to appoint an ad hoc blue ribbon committee of folks with shorelines expertise, similar to the DSRG that assisted the Planning Commission in the downtown plan, and have that blue ribbon committee assist the Planning Commission.
I would support staff's recommendation, to clarify my earlier comments.
Deputy Mayor?
I guess I'm kind of in that hybrid approach. I don't know if it's suspend or ad hoc committee, but I'm kind of in favor of that when we have our major plan update, that either reestablish the board or create the ad hoc committee to work with Planning Commission on those types of things, or when Planning Commission feels they need the help to reestablish or create the ad hoc. So I don't know what the best way to phrase it is. Is it suspend, or is it move forward with elimination and create ad hoc committees? But I'm in favor of that less frequent but as needed basis of a group of people in that role. Was that clear as mud?
Well, it doesn't take a position necessarily clear on what's here. So you're not supporting the staff recommendation?
I think it was.
I am. I just don't know that. I'm saying I am mostly supporting the staff recommendation, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So I am supporting the staff recommendation with the addition of the $100 stipend to be returned to the Planning Commission, which I heard Councilmember Evans and Councilmember Lamb support.
I'm good with that.
So I hear a majority to say at this point yes to the staff recommendation in 2014. So that was number 5. Okay, number 6 is the current code amendments to revise the current regulations pertaining to preschools.
I support the staff recommendation to bring this back on the 2015 docket.
And is it to Planning Commission? Let me look quickly.
It just says bring back in the docket.
Mr. Hassler, is this?
Yes.
Are you recommending this come
So
back to
council,
our docket?
staff's recommendation is not to initiate at this time, but to bring it back on next year's docket for reconsideration.
Okay. So staff recommendation, to be clear, because of the large scale of scope and work associated with the 2015 periodic plan and code update, staff recommends bringing this item back as the part of the 2015 docket of plan code amendments for the consideration at that time. So, Deputy Mayor, you're saying you support staff recommendation not
Correct.
to bring it back. Okay? Anyone else? Comments? Councilmember Evans?
Yes, I guess I don't want this to drop off the radar scope, but I certainly think it can come back as part of the 2015 plan update. So I would support the staff recommendation.
Councilmember Lamb?
I would support staff's recommendation, which, as I understand it, is to not initiate, and then
Correct.
staff will bring it back on its own.
We'll bring it
motion.
back to next
Sure.
year's docket for you.
Councilmember Rahim? Support. Councilmember Sandberg. So unanimous support for the staff recommendation. So that brings us to what we have on our printed material. We did have a couple other items that were discussed tonight. Does anybody want to take a charge on one or other, or any other that have not been brought up? Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes, I will speak to both of them, but one at a time.
Okay.
I would like to speak in support of the citizen request to add regulating bikini baristas as adult entertainment facilities to our docket, and to have that actually retained at council, although I would be open to having that sent to Planning Commission. We have received an enormous amount of public input about the public's concern about bikini baristas, and as my understanding is that this request is not to ban this type of establishment, but to regulate it as an adult entertainment facility. And the author of the letter that we received, I thought, did a really terrific job about laying out concerns and compelling arguments on why it can be could be regulated or considered to be regulated as a adult entertainment facility. We also have on our up on our dais tonight a petition signed by several people also in support of this. And I think that in the past we have heard that because they're just serving coffee in a bikini, and because you can wear a bikini in a public park, that is the same type of expression, and that it's really difficult to regulate it any differently. And I would argue that that bikini barista stands and wearing bikinis in a commercial establishment is much different than sunbathing in the park. In fact, bikini barista stands provide a context where adult entertainment is encouraged and expected, and for that reason, that difference in context, I think, is a good reason to consider regulating it as adult entertainment. And also, there's been significant precedent in our own city and in other cities that adult entertainment activities have been documented at these establishments, and they have been cited. So, for example, Hillbilly Hotties in Everett has been cited, and as has our own espresso stand, the Paradise Espresso stand in our own city. So, I think it's an important issue that the community feels very strongly about. And even though it might be a difficult, time-consuming issue, I think that it is it's reasonable for us to consider this issue and try and address the community's concerns before these establishments proliferate any further. So I respectfully ask that even though the staff's has planned out an ambitious plan for themselves, and that Planning Commission and City Council and we all have a full plate, that you add this item to that plate.
Thank you. Let's speak to this one, and then we'll give the floor back to you for the second you wanted to discuss. Is that all right? Yes. Great. Anybody else? You didn't say a specific time. You said you would like to retain this topic for council, but you would be open to planning commission, and you didn't put a time frame on it. Would you like to make your recommendation?
I think we could put the time frame after we finished the Fitzgerald, since we retained Fitzgerald plan amendments.
So
If
maybe
we
the
could-
end of 2014?
Yeah.
And retain at council. Okay. Do you want to speak to that?
I'm actually okay. I agree with everything Councilmember Sandberg said.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask your indulgence to be able to ask a clarifying question based on the fact that this is one that didn't come up in our initial review. So I appreciated the comments of Councilmember Sandberg, but what I wanted to ask our city attorney was, as I look over our adult entertainment ordinance, the provision, if we were to simply add this to it, and I'm not sure that it doesn't, I'm not sure that it wouldn't fall under these statutes if in fact the behavior is going on. Is that your take as well?
If I understand what you're saying correctly, I believe I'm in agreement with you. And
So just so I may not have been clear in my question, as I read our current adult entertainment code, I don't know that a change to that code would include bikini baristas if they're not already included right now. I think that the activities that take place that are being complained of and are alluded to would make it subject to the adult entertainment code. The concern that I have about wholesale opening up this code is that we currently have probably the strongest adult entertainment code in the state of Washington, and we had a proposal to cite an adult entertainment facility in Bothell in the form of a strip club that reviewed those regulations and then decided to go elsewhere. They didn't constitutionally challenge that ordinance at that time, and so it stands. And I guess my question to you is initiating a change, or do you believe that a change to our existing code is necessary to include these kind of coffee facilities under our adult entertainment umbrella if they're engaged in this kind of activity?
No, I don't. And the reason for that is the coffee stands, just like any other business, are either going to be adult entertainment or they're not going to be adult entertainment. The fact that this place serves coffee versus serves hamburgers versus serves, explicitly provides dancing performances is not the determining factor of whether it's adult entertainment or not. Rather, is adult entertainment activity going on, and that's the real issue. And is it going on at a level that rises to adult entertainment? An individual act. The issue with adult entertainment is an individual act does not create adult entertainment, and adult entertainment in and of itself even is not criminal behavior. It's expressive behavior. So there has to be a pattern, and that pattern can occur in a bikini barista stand just as much as it can occur in a massage parlor or in a strip club.
And so the code that we have right now, the one provision would be 5.14030, which is the definition of what an adult cabaret is. Do you believe that the way that this is currently drafted, it needs or does not need any qualifying language to make sure that these kind of facilities would be included if they engaged in the kind of habitual behavior that you were describing?
No, I don't think any clarification of that definition is needed. There is one minor modification that we will, at some point, I think we've agreed that we would bring back to council. The definition of adult entertainment is a little bit circular. I don't think that it is crippling, but it's a bit circular because adult entertainment happens in adult entertainment facilities. Adult entertainment facilities are where
Right.
adult entertainment occurs.
Understood.
It becomes, if you get somebody who's being very pedantic about the definition, then you may get a weird decision from time to time. But generally speaking, it's not a fatal flaw, but it is something at some point we'd like to fix. But it doesn't get to the heart of, can we do something more stringent than what we already have? We already have a fairly stringent adult entertainment code, and it would apply to a bikini barista stand just as it would apply to a strip club.
And if my final question to you, are you aware of any municipality in the state of Washington that has a stricter code for adult entertainment than the city of Bothell?
I am not.
Okay, thank you.
So, in support or not in support of Councilmember Sandberg's?
I'm in support of staff. I mean, as I understand from our city attorney, there is some clarifying language that needs to be put into, or that would be a good time to put into our code, our adult entertainment code. I think better to do that sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
This is an area that you can spend a lot of money in attorney's fees on. I think I'm more interested in working with our code compliant rather than changing the law. I'm interested in enforcing the laws that are currently on the books and providing the adequate resources to our community development, code enforcement, and law enforcement to make sure that activities that are under this code are enforced, and that people who are breaking the law in the city are held accountable.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in on a couple of questions. Do we have a food service standard? Like, I've walked into places before where it says no shoes, no shirt, no service. Like, if you're the server, isn't there some hygiene requirements for, you should have shirts on or something if you're working with hot milk and steam or whatever? I mean, aren't there things that cover the whole city that we're not just specifically choosing this one business to focus on, but it's something that could be general overall?
In the city, the county health has jurisdiction over those types of issues. This is something that we have at times discussed with county health, and they have have not to this point taken action or seen that it's a violation of county health codes.
So why couldn't we as a council decide that all coffee stands in the city of Bothell, so we're not individually picking out any, shall have certain standards for the servers? I mean, then we're not, it just seems reasonable, right?
Those are things you can look at. It would probably need to apply to more than just coffee stands, but food service in general standards. But again, it has to be valid. It would have to be based on legitimate health and welfare type issues.
Yeah. So I understand the concern of taking this up. For me, my concern is greater for our society. I would like to make sure that we get this on the docket. My heart breaks for those girls that I'm wondering where their dad or their mom were to tell them that they had worth, that they should value themselves in this regard. So for that, I'm sad, and for the folks that frequent those institutions, it's a shameful practice. So I would certainly be in support of having this come to council in 2014 and see it as an important matter for our city to take up. Any others? Councilmember Evans?
Well, I appreciate the discussion. Obviously, this is something that we don't want in our city, but the Constitution gives people the right to express themselves. Now, we do have adult entertainment zones and that adult entertainment is confined to, and we have a strict ordinance that regulates that. I guess I wasn't clear from the city attorney whether, as these stands are working now, do they meet the definition of adult entertainment? I guess I just wasn't sure on that response back.
Who are you asking that of?
The city attorney,
Okay.
if that's okay.
They have not currently, to this point, reached that level, at least according to our hearing examiner. We have taken forward one case that we felt had crossed the line. The hearing examiner heard all the evidence and said the pattern was not. He basically said there was one episode, and it took more than one episode to one instance of bad behavior to be adult entertainment. I can see his point. But we are continuing to investigate, we are continuing to monitor, and we are continuing to accept reports from citizens and gather data. And at any point that those investigations show a pattern that we can act upon with either through code enforcement or law enforcement, we have every intention of moving at that point.
So this minor tweaking that you mentioned, that would require a code amendment. That would require us considering it as part of the docket or for review.
To the definition of adult entertainment, I normally that's how community development brings these things forward is through the regular docketing. So I would stick with that unless Bill had a different feeling on that.
Okay, thank you.
So, if that is true, if I'm hearing that correct, I mean, what Councilmember Sandberg requested is that we review how these items can be addressed with the bikini baristas, and potentially this is part of it. So it would have to be something we put on the docket. So I don't know. It almost sounded like Councilmember Lamb was saying we need to discuss this issue as well with what the attorney brought up.
I guess, Mike, if I could have the floor again. I mean, my belief is, as Councilmember Evans said, that these are facilities that aren't, or things that we wish were not in our city. The issue is amending our code going to improve, going to do anything, or is it simply going to make us feel good and say, hey, we toughened it up and we put our ordinances on and we took a stand on this. If it doesn't change anything, if the law on the ground either isn't being enforced or we need more resources to enforce it, the existing laws in the books, the legislatures and city councils and governing bodies throughout history are full of examples where people are like, I'm going to pass a tough law and we're really going to take a stand on this, and the law does nothing because either it is unconstitutional, it's unenforceable, or there aren't the resources put in place to implement the law. So the questions I had of our city attorney were, are there any changes that we could make to our existing code to more precisely address the issue of these coffee stands in our city? And I believe the answer that I heard from him was no, that there's a specific change that we could make that would make our overall adult entertainment laws more workable and more defensible, and that our adult entertainment laws are the toughest in the state of Washington. He also alluded to the fact that we're currently undergoing several enforcement actions related to or surrounding this issue. So the question that I have is what, and I'm in complete solidarity with the people who submitted this, but as I read over the request, there isn't really, what they're basically saying is we want these facilities to be defined as adult entertainment. As our city attorney indicated, adult entertainment is defined by what happens, not whether you serve coffee or beer or Diet Coke. It's the actual activity itself. And so I think that is an issue of enforcement and having the resources to enforcement and following through, rather than inserting coffee into means a nightclub, bar, restaurant, drive-through coffee stand. If that's what's being proposed, we could do that tonight, and I don't have any problem with, or we could have a hearing and add drive-through coffee stand to explicitly say that if that activity takes place in a drive-through coffee stand or a McDonald's or anywhere else, it's prohibited. But there was nothing in the letter that suggested that the activities, that we change our definition of adult entertainment to encompass more activities than it currently does. And the reason I think the writers of the letter are wise, because the code that we currently have is constitutional. It's been vetted. Our city attorney is suggesting that we could make a change to that. I would support bringing back that change. And if it would make people feel better to add in the definition of 5.14030 to add coffee stands, there's certainly no harm in adding coffee stands to make it clear that adult entertainment means adult entertainment. I just haven't heard any suggestions tonight, and there really is no request in the letter that we change the definitions contained in our adult entertainment, which are already the toughest in the state of Washington, to somehow make them different. And unless somebody has a definition or language that they wish to include in there other than including coffee stands, I think it's sort of an exercise in in making ourselves feel good as opposed to addressing the problem, which is potentially criminal or adult entertainment activity in our city.
Council or Deputy Mayor Spivey?
Well,
Councilmember
Sandberg has a question or a comment. I'll yield.
We haven't asked the other requesters to specify a particular remedy or specific code language. We have, for example, with the Fitzgerald regulation said, there could be a problem there. Let's look at it, or let's have Planning Commission look at it and see what we can do to remedy that. And I think that we can apply that same standard in this situation. And so for that reason, I think we should add this discussion to Council's docket for the end of 2014.
Okay. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Spivey?
I'm not opposed to listening to this. Having crafted unique language that's in our adult entertainment code, I know that it is probably the most comprehensive and strict code that in the state of Washington. I'm all for bringing in the city attorney's language, and if that's the way we need to do it, then I'm all for that. But I agree with Councilmember Lamb. I don't know that we're going to make any substantive changes just because of the restrictions that are put on us by the Constitution and other federal rulings. But I'm more than willing to listen to the options as we put in the city attorney's language for that he's requesting later.
Okay. Somewhat.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can, I would support initiating this as a code amendment or as for the docket to incorporate the changes that the city attorney suggested that he would have, and included in that would be any additional language that he thinks would be helpful to address this issue, if any.
How do you feel about that? How that was stated?
Yeah, retained by council for this year, because it sounds like there's a change that's fairly proximate that could be done this year.
You supported that? William? Yeah? Everybody? Good. And for clarity, I do this for far more than just feeling good. This is an important item that affects our society. So any decision I do is not just for good feelings, it's for purpose. So item number 7.
So I actually put this code amendment request in front of you. And this is something that I spoke to you as a citizen last year about making a change to specific portions of the Bothell Municipal Code, mostly in Chapter 6 relating to animals, that would go back to original language, allowing dogs being under voice command versus being on a leash at all times. So in 2010, the City Council changed its regulations to require all domestic animals be kept on a leash rather than be under voice command. The change was made in response to an unfortunate incident in which a dangerous dog escaped its enclosure, attacking a dog owner and killing a dog. Changes were made to include definitions of dangerous dogs at that time and provide for insurance requirements and other enforcement procedures. Unfortunately, those code changes resulted in making throwing a ball for your dog in a city park illegal and subject to a $250 fine. And since there are no off-leash dog areas in the city and no funding to provide one, I was asking that council forward these specific code requests to the Parks and Recreation Board for their consideration and recommendation. And it could be as simple as reviewing the actual Bothell Municipal Code language. It could also involve considering a dog owner code of conduct in parks, and also considering a pilot project for allowing off-leash dog activity as a pilot project in one city park before making a citywide action. And that's all there in front of you.
So I appreciate you bringing this forward. I haven't had a chance to read this, so I'd like to go into break for 15 minutes, or so let's just say 8:20. Gives everybody a chance to look over each one of these items and then come back. I'm wondering if council would actually indulge me just for 1 second, just because I understand it's probably going to be a simple matter with the North Creek letter. Would folks be in support of a letter going out from council?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's an overwhelming yes. And then bringing back a resolution, would folks be in favor of bringing a resolution back as well?
Yes.
So that's a collective yes. Sorry, that was very quick and it had to take an hour and a half to get to. All right, so we'll go into break for 15 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, I saw something on the projected agenda. Since you're interested in housing, there's an arch.
Yes,
Something in March. So you should look.
The Bothell City Council is back in session, and Councilmember Sandberg, you actually had the floor, as I recall, or maybe you just finished your comments?
And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect. Does anybody make?
I have a question.
Councilmember Lamb?
So and maybe I'm ruining like a great secret, but there is a place where people play off leash with their dogs all the time at the end of 228th. Just immediately south of Business Park off of the North Creek Trail. Like literally every afternoon, every day, and code enforcement, please plug your ears. They're off leash, they're having a good time. There's no and I appreciate the need. I mean, if there was a crackdown on that space and those people were all cited, I would say it would be a huge problem. But I'm a little concerned that this is an area where it is a legitimate problem that the people who have dogs that attack people are likely the people who aren't parsing our code language and saying, hey, are we going to do this? But I would just ask, and because it's a new one, I'd indulge, how many citations have we had in the city for people being off-leash and having off-leash dogs? I'd be curious, and not because I agree with you. I mean, if you have a Chihuahua and the Chihuahua's off leash and somebody came up and slapped you with a $250 fine, I think that would be an absolute injustice. My concern is that probably was the first place with this law, like tough cases kind of make bad law, and I wouldn't want to flip back the other way. So I'm intrigued by the idea, but I just would want some more information. And I'm not against it. I feel like I need to know more before I would support initiating.
And if we could have our animal enforcement officer include how many warnings, because I've heard a lot of people who got warnings, which is nice. Thanks for the warning, as opposed to the actual $250 infraction. But
yeah,
I think that's good information.
Okay.
But I'd also say, as a dog owner, on every city park there is a sign that says pets must be on a leash. And
see, this isn't a city park. That's, I think, why everybody goes there. So I could be wrong.
So, okay. Well, I'm just asking for consideration, and I think this would be a great thing for the Parks Board to take up.
Councilmember Evans.
You're right. That is a popular place off of 228th. Yeah. And it is private property is the concern, and I know there's been interest by a lot of people for an off-leash dog park, which I really think that's the way to handle this issue, is to have an off-leash dog park someplace. My concern is, having been around parks a lot and seen animals running loose or whatever the case may be, there's been situations where kids have been sorely frightened, and the dog wasn't necessarily being aggressive or anything, but I happen to have a granddaughter that falls in that category that was really, really concerned. So, and my other concern is that hopefully the majority of the owners are respectable and control their dogs. Now, I don't have a dog, and I'm not familiar with voice commands, but I don't know how that works, if that works well for the majority of the public. So I am concerned about if this would do away with our leash law. I have a concern about that, and maybe that's where this gets studied or something, that type of thing. So, is this a code amendment that you're asking for? Is that, or is this a pilot project that we could consider? I guess anyway. I have some hesitations about this for the reasons I stated, and again, I think that the proper solution to this is to have a off-leash park somewhere that people then can let their dogs run off-leash and there's not a problem. But in parks where the public is, even though I know some of them may be under control of voice command, I'm afraid there's some that aren't, and that's where the problem begins, I think, in those situations. So,
Okay.
Can I respond to his question?
Was there a question? Did you ask a question?
Yes, you did.
what was the question I asked?
You said
She heard a question.
Is my intent to just make this code, to make this code change, or, and to remove the leash law, or were there other components of that?
Well, what my question was that I raised, I thought was, does this have to be a code amendment, or is there another way to address this? And my way to address it would be through an off-leash dog park.
And that's why I wrote in here that there are other ways to address this, because I do share your concern. It's that we have parks that primarily serve people, and we don't want to create a situation with anybody who has a fear of dogs, even older adults who could get knocked over and seriously injured by a dog that's not under voice command. And so that's why I suggested, it could be changing the code. It could be considering that pilot project in one park. It could encompass having, a code of conduct where that it's not just I get to have my dog off leash anytime I want. But I feel like waiting for an off-leash dog area, given our current state of funding, is going to take too long to serve dog owners in our city. And I think there are other ways to do this without a cost impact, and that's what I would like the Park and Recs Board to explore.
Okay. So you've had Councilmember Rayam or Deputy Mayor Spivey comments on this? Councilmember Rayam.
I'm okay with it moving forward, but I have a quick personal story that I thought was worthwhile to talk about. So I won't mention the park, but there's a park near my house that I frequent. Actually, I wasn't even there at this first incident, where there was a dog that was off its leash, and my kids were there, and my dog was there, and it came up and just attacked my dog, ripped him open, $800 vet bill, the whole 9 yards. Police were involved. They gave the person a warning, and I don't know. I think she did actually get a fine on that one, and then she actually paid the vet bill too. But the second instance, when I came through the same park walking my kids with my dog, it was actually dark this time. We were just cutting through to get back on the road, and the lady was there with her dog again, and my kids were mortified, and they knew the dog's name from the last time because the lady was screaming while I was tearing my dog apart. So. The whole purpose of my story is that I don't really, I know there's a lot of intelligent people in this world, and people usually have good intentions, but that dog was out of control, and that owner didn't think anything of it. That the dog came back again, same park even, and same kids, same other dog scenario, where I took my dog off a leash and just so I get away from my family. So I have a lot of resistance about putting it on the mindset of the dog owner about whether it's okay or not for that dog to be off a leash where my kids are, or anybody's kids are for that matter in the city. So a dog off leash park, I'm definitely intrigued about, but I just think for the most part, I worry about putting it into the eye of the beholder, if you will, on whether or not their dog is safe for interaction with other people.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Spivey.
I kind of feel the same way in that. Voice commands to what standard? I know of dogs that they're great. They do what you tell, and then the moment there is another dog around, you could call that dog all you want, and it's taken off after that the dog that it sees, similar to probably what you experienced. Leash laws, I can't think of a community or a county that doesn't have them. King County has a leash law. Snohomish County has a leash law. All the communities around us, I believe, have leash laws. And so I'm a little concerned with eliminating leash law, going to voice commands. I am more interested in having the off-leash park as an alternative, or to explore alternatives for the purposes of, being able to throw the ball and all. I'm not opposed to pick, Park A, for example, and say on X days of the week from this time to this time, it's off leash for. I mean, that's an alternative, and I'm all for exploring alternatives, but I don't know that we need to docket something to look at alternatives for how we address the ability to play with your dog in an off leash manner.
Okay. So everybody's had a chance to speak on this. I would be open to talk about the dog park, but not overall. And I don't hear support from council for what you've written as the recommended action. And just so the public can understand what was requested as well here, the code amendment request by Councilmember Sandberg was to review the BMC regarding the requirement that domestic animals be on a leash at all times within the city. Consider a dog owner code of conduct that allows for safe coexistence between human and well-behaved canine park users. Consider a pilot project at one park in the city before a city-wide action. Forward to Parks and Recreation Board for consideration and recommended. What I did hear from the majority was that they would be open to a city park where there would be an off-leash park for 7 days a week, or, as Deputy Mayor Spivey said, for a portion of the week. So I don't know that we would need to make a code amendment request this evening and place it on the docket, because we do have a PROSEP that one of the goals is to find an off-leash park, and I'd imagine we'd address the code issues at that time. So anybody will make comment on that? I just don't see support to put it on a code amendment this evening. So.
Mayor, I think you've correctly summarized the discussion. One thing that I would say to Councilor Sandberg is I think there are a lot of different ways that this can be addressed. I know in Washington, D.C., this is kind of unusual, but they have the old congressional cemetery had kind of fallen into disrepair, and so they had a local community of dogs who wanted an off-leash park. The District of Columbia had zero money for an off-leash dog park, and so they cooperated and they said, we'll kind of maintain the cemetery, and it will then become an off-leash dog park. So I think as we indicated earlier, there are currently private properties that are being used for off-leash dog, for sort of de facto off-leash dog parks, and maybe maybe approaching the owners would be a good way to ruin that. But I think there might be. I'm supportive of bringing back on the projected agenda this topic to discuss collaborative ways that we can make that work.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you. I think there's been some interesting discussion up here, and there's a range of possibilities that I think are worthy of discussion. So I will look forward to it on an upcoming agenda.
Great. And you said you had 2 items. Are you releasing the floor? Sure. Okay. Anybody else have any other docketed items they may want to have the council consider? Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
So there's a motion by
Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. Before that, I believe that there was a letter that was submitted to you at the break. I don't know if we've announced that or not, but it would be entered into the record formally.
Can I
It
see
was
that,
given to the
Mayor?
clerk.
Oh, okay. So this is from Mr. Terry Klim and Karen Klim. Oh, it's okay. So it's submitted by the Klims, but it's a letter written by Brian and Roxanne Pearson. So I'm just going to read it for the record. Dear Council, we are writing to encourage the City of Bothell to find common ground in a timely manner with reasonable development efforts for our area, Zone 1. Numerous developers have started and stopped serious development efforts with signed contracts and extensive feasibility. After finding the excessive LID standards are economically infeasible, we would ask the City apply LIDs consistent with the rest of the surrounding area and not hold this one area to a higher unrealistic standard. The on-again, off-again nature of the process for our neighbors has been life-altering. Thinking we were all about to move several times only to have the development rug yanked is very unsettling. For those nearing or in retirement and in the need of relocating, this has put them in an incredible financial bind. For some, the large property is getting to be too much for to manage as well. Please find this important common ground on reasonable LID standards so the development can move forward in a way that makes sense for landowners and helps the city reach its infrastructure objectives. Sincerely, Brian and Roxanne Pearson. So I'll hand this back to the clerk. So that's in the record now, and we'll let the clerk number what attachment that would be. But I had a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Rayum to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And the clerk display. So the public hearing is closed. At this time, I'd be open to motions. Actually, let me just take a second. What we just did as council is discuss all these items that could potentially put on the document and place them as priority in 2014 or 2015, as specifically stated who they should go to. And collectively, we came to an understanding that item number 1 would be something that we would consider. And we went with the staff recommendation that would go to the Planning Commission in 2014. For item number 2, we agree that this should be initiated, and this is in regards to the property owner concerns regarding the development potential of property within the Fitzgerald area. We want to retain this at council, and this is a very high priority in 2014. Item number 3 is a ways back. Item number 3 is the staff requesting to study potential planning code amendments regarding the number of unrelated persons that live in a single dwelling. 5 out of 6 council members supported this to go to Planning Commission in 2015. Item number 4 is code amendments to exempt portable classroom buildings from traffic mitigation. Council decided this would not be initiated, and this will be formally put in place with a motion. Item number 5 is code amendments to consider transferring to Shorelines Board responsibilities to the Planning Commission. This passed with 4 being in support and 2 not wanting to go to Planning Commission. This would be retained at council in 2014. And then item number 6 were to revise the current regulations pertaining to preschools. We went with the staff recommendation not to initiate this year, but it will be coming back as a consideration on the 2015 ballot. Then we discussed issue number 6 regarding reviewing the adult entertainment code with a potential look toward how a coffee stand or other institutions may fit into that. That was would be retained by council in 2014. And we discussed the dog-related issues and decided that collectively that should come back on the projected agenda and discussed in regards to the ProSAP and looking for an off-leash dog park. Do I have that correct? Any corrections?
No corrections, Mr. Mayor. I would just move the action consistent with the action you just described.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Evans. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And if the clerk can display, passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. So the next item that we had on our agenda was the Sound Cities recommendation and to weigh in on the transportation district. So Councilmember Sandberg brought that up. Would you like to lead us in that discussion?
Sure. So tonight, I guess right now, King County is having a hearing on whether to go forward with a transportation benefit district. And I don't know all of the details. I'm sure Councilmember Rayum knows them better than I do, but the proposal is to institute a $60 car tab fee for King County residents, 60% of which would go to Metro Transit Services, and then the remaining percentage would be sent back to the cities or unincorporated county to maintain roads. And Sound Cities, which is a consortium of Eastside King County cities has drafted a letter in support of this, and at the council retreat, I spoke about my opinion about this and how I felt like it was not a good deal for Bothell because historically transit fees have flowed significantly to Seattle, and East King County cities have suffered in getting transit service, and that was at the time just a qualitative assessment, like it feels like our money's going to Seattle. And since then, in the last week or two, there's an independent agency called WalkScore, and they score transit services in a whole range of cities across the country, but they ranked 20 Washington cities. So 20 Washington cities, and it just so happened that number 20 was Bothell. And that to me, gave some quantitative assessment to the fact that, our transit dollars are at least not residing in Bothell. And so I wanted to have a discussion up here on the dais about how we felt about either supporting or rejecting King County's CARTAB proposal based on that, and also my concern about if we do have a CARTAB in King County, but we don't have it in Snohomish County, are we just going to use King County funds to maintain King County streets while Snohomish County streets suffer? Are we going to, if it passes, what would we do with the Snohomish County portion of our city? So, my personal opinion, as I stated before, is I don't think that this proposal serves Bothell, King County's proposal. I don't think it serves Bothell well, and I think we should make that known to them. And I appreciate your thoughts and input.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Councilmember, or Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Thank you. I agree. We're not being served by any of the transit agencies, but we're best served of all of them by Sound Transit, believe it or not. The one that's supposed to be taking commuters across the county lines, that's the one that serves as the best, not only to Seattle, but to Bellevue. That being said, I wouldn't support unless we were getting more transit dollars and more transit service. And I would like to think that if we're being held to these population and work population criterion through the Growth Management Act, that we should be getting the transit dollars and the service to go along with that. So I'm kind of with you on the fact that we shouldn't support it. As far as if it does go through, how do we deal with Snohomish County? We currently have an EMS levy that the city puts into place for our Snohomish County residents for the King County Medical One service that we get. So I'm assuming or guessing that we would have to consider that option to be equitable across the city. The discussion would probably have to at least happen. Whether it did or not, that's the other. But there's, who knows? Snohomish County may do the same thing, and it may become a moot point. But I wouldn't support King County's recommendation of moving forward with a CARTAB fee.
Okay. Other comments? Councilmember Evans.
I thought I read an email today or something that where some of the east side cities were not supporting this also. You mentioned that some of the east side cities had signed on to it, but maybe I read the letter wrong where it was a different email, but I thought it was from some of the mayors who said that they did not support this either. So
I don't like the split. I think it's unfair. I'm not a huge fan of CARTABs to begin with, but I think the split of that we pay 100% of the tax and only get 40% of the revenue, regardless of whether we got transit service or not, seems inequitable. So
So you're not in support?
I'm not. I mean, I'm not in support of paying people in Bothell paying 100% of the tax and only getting 40% of the dollars back. And effectively, with what we have right now, as Councilmember Spivey indicated, Sound Transit serves the city of Bothell quite well. You can get, if you're commuting to the city of Seattle, there are good transit options for you through Sound Transit. I don't know that we've been particularly well served by King County Metro, either to the east side or to Seattle. So I would be more inclined to support a Sound Transit initiative to beef up their buses that are already working well. But without knowing more, I mean, just kind of put more money into the same system. I wouldn't agree with it.
Okay, Councilmember Maria.
So to add a little salt to the wound, it's actually only 27% would go back to cities. So
that stinks.
So I need to vote on this. It's not actually tomorrow. That's why Councilmember Sandberg put it on the agenda, because I thought the meeting's tomorrow. It's not. It's a week from now. But it sounds like I've got my marching orders, and I do agree with everything you guys, all of you have said. It's been disheartening because I go to the transportation meetings and hear about the transit plans for 2040 and everything else, and we're just missed and missed and missed as a city on all the transit planning that's being done now. And just so we know, I do think the SCA probably will have a majority to sign this letter in support of it, but I'm willing to express our dissatisfaction with the level of service that we have seen. And this funding actually doesn't expand the service. This is just funding what's there now. This is an important thing. And it does, 40% of it does go to roads, but only 27% of that actually goes to cities. The other 13% stays with the county roads, unincorporated county roads. So I know we're not alone, though. There'll be other cities that are also dissatisfied with the proposed vehicle fee, and also real quick that it will go to the public vote is the plan that King County is having. So the public will be able to weigh in on this. It won't be a automatic fee increase. So that's it.
So how best to deliver the message? You'll do it at the meeting in a week. Do you need a letter from all the council members signed? What would you like to be equipped with?
I could just show up. I was going to bring the article that Councilmember Sandberg gave me and just really lay it out there that Bothell got 17 out of 100 points out of a national study of transportation availability or mass transit availability to the residents of the city. And, and other places are doing just fine. 57 out of 100 points for Seattle. Kirkland's 41 out of 100. Redmond, 39 out of 100. And we, Silverdale was better than us. Oak Harbor, Auburn, Tumwater, Bremerton, Yakima, Issaquah. I mean, all the way. And we are the bottom because we are bisected by that county line. And so I think it's a good opportunity for us to really dig that issue home to them, that it's an issue for us that they're not addressing. So
sounds like you're well equipped. Councilmember Evans?
As we discussed this at the retreat, the problem is we don't have an option to opt out of this. I mean, we kind of get stuck with it. I mean, there was, huh? Yeah. All I can say is move to Snohomish County, I guess. But so there wasn't a real good solution. So other than screaming and yelling, that's the best thing we can do right now, I guess.
Or to make our position known to our King County residents and voters in Bothell.
Well, that's what I'm asking. How best to present that to our voters so they know? I mean, you'll go to the committee and you'll express the majority of council's feelings on this, but I wonder if there's another thing that needs to be done. So maybe something to consider. Andy, do you have a thought?
We did a similar thing for the school district, which said to inform yourself and get it out to the public that we take up this issue, and we hope that they consider or educate themselves on which way to vote on the topic. I don't know if we want to make that hard line that we're adamantly express that they should vote no. I'm not opposed to doing that. I just
well, for me, I mean, I've always taken a position, and we as a council, that we don't make statements to direct people how to vote on matters that are on the ballot. This is not on the ballot.
Not yet. It will be.
It's not yet. No, so that's what I'm saying. We could take a position today before it's on the ballot. I don't want to take issues. I don't want to take issue on anything that's on the ballot, but I think we should be passionate about this item. But, so for today, you have your direction as the majority of council. Is there anything else for the good of the cause? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Hearing none, we are adjourned.